My Hero Academia is a good show. I think that's pretty well known by now. I do not intend to tell you that MHA is actually garbage and you're a terrible person for liking it, because that's not true. However, I do think it has some flaws, just like every other show in the world. So in this video, I'm gonna look back at the first season of the anime, mostly for the sake of criticizing it, but I am gonna talk about what it does well when I feel like it. And with that established, episodes 1 and 2. These two episodes act both as backstory and as setup for the rest of the series. For positives, I really like how they set up what a corrupt capitalist nightmare the hero system is by showing Kamui Woods upset that the bad guy was defeated because he won't get the credit. I also thought that Bakugo's introduction was really good, not only because it gives us a really good sense that he's an asshole, but because it serves to introduce us to the desire to stand out, which is later established as something most heroes need, and by introducing us to this theme with Bakugo's angry extreme version of it, it makes us hate him more, but also subtly sets up that despite his everything, Bakugo does have a genuine desire to be a hero. Unfortunately, these episodes also introduce us to the thing that will be the biggest issue, not only for the season, but for the entire series, and that being, well, Deku is a terrible protagonist. These episodes are about how Deku wants to be a hero, even without a quirk. He does everything he can to find a way to be a hero, but in the end, the series basically says he cannot be a hero if he doesn't have a quirk. But don't worry, All Might can give him a quirk, so even if no one else who's unfortunate enough to not be born with a quirk can ever be a hero, Deku can, and that's all that matters. Yeah, the series basically proves this is what it's saying when Deku charges in to save Bakugo from the slime villain without even thinking it. The show tries to say that this is a heroic moment that proves that Deku can really achieve his dreams, but the truth is, he couldn't do anything to help Bakugo in this situation. If All Might hadn't been there, Deku probably would have died. Yeah, I don't like this. It changes the show's message from, no matter who you are or how little you have, you can achieve your dreams, to, if you aren't naturally talented, tough luck. Hopefully someone else can give your dream to you, but otherwise, you should give up. And the thing is, I don't think that's an inherently bad message. Sometimes things are impossible and you just can't fight against what society dictates, and I think that a story explicitly about those themes could be very interesting. But that's not what My Hero Academia is. It thinks it's an upbeat story about how anyone can be a hero, despite the fact that the beginning of the story explicitly refutes that. I think that these episodes, and the entire series for that matter, would have been a lot better if they changed it to, instead of being quirkless, Deku just had a weak quirk, and the main thing stopping him from being a hero was his lack of confidence. It's already a part of his character, even if it isn't handled well, and these first two episodes really wouldn't require that much tweaking to fit in with this approach. The slime villain scene would work particularly well with this version because it wouldn't be about how Deku can still help people without a quirk when it proves that he can't, but instead about how Deku can gather the courage to help people in need, like he's always wanted to. But that's not what happened, and I think the show is worse for it. The next two episodes are actually pretty good, and I don't have much to say about them, but to avoid any actualies, I will take this opportunity to say that while yes, Deku did train and work hard in these episodes, it doesn't debunk my point about how the series invalidates the idea that you can do anything by working hard, because the hard work would have been pointless if All Might hadn't given Deku his power. Also, I think the robot punch from episode 4 would have been better if the narrative was about Deku's self-confidence, as it would have been about him being able to stand up to literally the biggest of foes for the sake of other people. But otherwise, I think these episodes work pretty well. I think the next episode, about Class 1A taking aptitude tests, actually shows a pretty clever way to, mostly, sidestep the problem of Deku proving he can be a hero based on his own merits. Because in this episode, Deku fails almost every single test but manages to pass one through the use of his intelligence and creativity, as opposed to Aizawa just letting him pass, or because his superpower is just so awesome he couldn't fail. Though unfortunately, Deku's intelligence and creativity was still rooted in how he used his power, and he most likely wouldn't have been able to pass without it, so it still does make the episode worse than it would otherwise be, but it's still an improvement on what had come before. The fight with Bakugo that makes up the show's next mini-arc has a similar problem. The beginning shows Deku able to fight Bakugo off pretty well using his intelligence and what he's learned from watching Bakugo. It does a pretty good job demonstrating Deku's ability to fight strategically, which is one of his main redeeming features of his character, at least until Season 3 when he stops doing it. But then Bakugo starts creatively applying his quirk, and Deku just can't compete. Bakugo basically thrashes him, and the one thing that this fight makes clear is that Deku cannot win without a quirk. And for that matter, he couldn't win with his quirk either. Yeah, he technically won the mock battle, but he couldn't defeat Bakugo. If anything, the only reason he did so well early in the fight was because Bakugo underestimated him and didn't try to fight smart. And I think this just corrupts the hard work message even more, because it's basically saying that no matter what other strengths you have, if you're not born talented, you won't be able to achieve anything unless someone hands you talent on a silver platter. This series critically mishandles the idea of hard work versus natural talent, and that wouldn't be so bad if the series didn't try to convince us that Deku did this with his hard work, because he very clearly didn't. Aside from that, the fight is mostly really good, but there's one other issue that it highlights. So I think I made it clear earlier that I think the show would have been better if it was about Deku's lack of self-confidence rather than his lack of a quirk, and I stand by that. However, the series also doesn't really handle Deku's lack of self-confidence very well. There are about 2 times Deku's self-doubt actually gets the better of him and stops him from doing something. The first time is in episode 1 when Bakugo is bullying Deku and he doesn't stand up for himself. The other time is in episode 9 when he gives up the class rep position because he doesn't think he can do a good job. And boy howdy are these incredibly irrelevant moments. You would honestly be hard-pressed to find a less important plot point than who the class rep is. I think it comes into play like once in the entire rest of the series. And while the bullying scene may be more important, it's completely overshadowed by all the times Deku does brave things. Not only in the rest of the series, but in the first episode itself, wherein he clings to All Might's leg while he jumps several miles up in the air just to ask him a question. And also literally the first time Deku does anything in the show, he's standing up to Bakugo, albeit in a flashback. And then when you add up every other scene in the show where Deku does something brave, you realize that Deku's supposed self-confidence issues never actually impact the events of the story, so it stops feeling like Deku actually has self-doubt. It just kinda seems like he's nervous all the time, and like, I get that. It's kinda relatable, but it's not a compelling character trait, a flaw he has to work around, or an arc for him to go through. So basically, the 2 main obstacles for Deku to overcome, not having a quirk, i.e. not being naturally talented, and a lack of self-confidence, aren't actually obstacles in the show. And without anything to overcome, or any ability to personify the show's themes, Deku's kind of a really bad protagonist. The only real redeeming feature that he has at this point is the ability to fight smart, but he even loses that after season 2. But for all the Deku stands out there mad that I'm bad-mouthing your boy, don't worry, I'm done talking about Deku and I'm moving on to the USJ arc. And it's a pretty good arc. I really like how it shows Aizawa's ability to use his quirk in disadvantageous situations. It's almost like having a bad quirk you need to work to make good would have been a better approach for the protagonist than having no quirk but being given a super OP one. I'm sorry, I said I wouldn't criticize Deku anymore. I'll stop. Another good thing was All Might's fight at the end, but I don't think I really need to explain why that was great. You probably already know. Overall, I think that this arc's main flaw was how it handled its cast. I actually think that the best parts of MHA are the one where it focuses on the characters from its extended cast and not just Deku, but because MHA has such a big cast and is constantly introducing new characters, there's a very big imbalance on how much focus each member of Class 1A gets. Some get well fleshed out arcs, some get a few moments scattered throughout the series, some get personality but no depth, and some are just left out to rot like Gojiro, whose entire character is that he has a tail. But in this arc, with every character scattered in a different area of USJ, all having to fight their own villains, it would have been a great opportunity to focus on every member of Class 1A. And even if there wouldn't be time to give them deep character arcs, we still could have gotten a good look at most of them. But instead we get a few scenes with 13, a few with Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari, and like one with Todoroki. Even Sue and Mineta, who are with Deku, don't really get moments of their own. They just stand around acting in character until Deku comes up with an admittedly pretty cool use of one of Bakugo's techniques to beat the villains and escape. I think the character best used in this arc, at least among the students, is actually Kirishima. He doesn't really get his own moments, but the arc establishes his personality pretty well and lays a pretty good foundation for his bromance with Bakugo, which is honestly one of the best things in the entire series. But that's pretty much it for Season 1. Deku's a bad protagonist and the show didn't use its supporting cast very well. Honestly, not that bad. Again, I think the show is good. The worst thing about the season is that the 2 flaws kind of make each other worse. By focusing on the supporting cast less, it makes Deku a bigger focus, and when Deku is focused on more, his flaws are too, and Deku being bad means the supporting cast needed to carry more weight than they ended up doing. I don't think I'm going to cover the next few seasons because I don't really have much to criticize there, especially since I just made the bulk of my Deku criticisms here. And if you're an MHA or Deku stan who watched till now, thank you. I know how easy it can be to just rage quit out of a video leaving a dislike and a mean comment, but it means a lot to me that you stuck around to listen to my points. And hey, while you're here, maybe you can subscribe and ring the bell. Also follow me on Twitter at @blank_YT_. But that's all I have for now. Bye.